welcome to Get Fruitful Conversations. I'm your host, Anwen Cooper, and if you're interested in growing a passion-fueled, purpose-driven enterprise and believe that business can be a force for greater good, then this is the podcast for you. Each episode, I'll be talking with inspiring entrepreneurs and inviting them to share how they're pioneering new ways of working to create more prosperity and positive impact for people and the planet. We'll be bringing you fresh insight and practical actions to generate more income and impact through your own business. Our purpose is to give you new perspectives on how to align your vision to a bigger mission in a way that fulfills your personal potential while also generating a longer lasting legacy and more value for all. So thanks for tuning in. I'm delighted you're here to listen. Now let's get fruitful with today's conversation. So, as I said, today I am going to be reflecting on conversations I have been having with all of the podcast guests so far about what does business as a force for good mean? And I am going to be summarising some of those conversations that I have been having with people so far. So I think that there are 4 different ways that we can look at this theme of business as a force for good. There are 4 different perspectives that we can use. The first of them is thinking about how business can be a force for good for you as a business owner, for you as an individual. And this is something that has come through particularly strongly in 3 particular episodes. The very first conversation I had back at the beginning was with Catherine Gallagher. And she talked about how business can be a tool for self-expression and personal development, and really enjoyed having that discussion with her. And she was talking also about the Japanese concept of ikigai, which is a way of looking at your personal talents and knowledge and passion and seeing where there is a need for that in the world, and where you can balance those 2 aspects is where you can obviously create a sustainable and profitable business. So yeah, that conversation with Catherine really kind of got us thinking about what is it to create meaningful and satisfying work for yourself, and how do you create a business out of something that you love and care about, and that really allows you to use your gifts and talents to serve the world. So that's the first way that I want to encourage you to think about business as a force for good. How can you use your business as a force for good for yourself? And how can your business serve you to do your best work, live your best life, live to your full potential, and create the life that you want to lead, to realize your personal goals and ambitions. And this topic also came up in the episode that I recorded with Jane Ollis. That was back in number 3. And she was talking about how personal well-being has been really fundamental to her business, and how that's really, really important with what she does. And she was talking about the link between personal well-being and planetary well-being, which I think was really interesting to think about. How if we're not looking after ourselves as individuals, and maintaining our own personal health and well-being, then we're probably not likely to be very nice to other people and to treat the planet well as well. So that was a really, I thought, interesting way of looking at it, and how fundamentally important it is to look after ourselves as people in business, so that we can have a positive effect on all of those around us, other people that we're working with, and also extending that care to the planet. And this topic about business as a force for good has also come through in the episode that I recorded with Deborah Turner. So that was episode number 5. That conversation was all about the importance of being authentic in business and being visible and feeling comfortable in your own skin, being willing to stand up and be seen, being confident to talk about who you are and what you do and why you do it, and just being yourself, really, and being confident and comfortable to be yourself. And that, I thought, was another really interesting way of looking at how business as a force for good can impact on you as an individual business owner and as a person, and how that is a really fundamental starting point, really, for growing or launching a successful business. So that was my first takeaway, that business as a force for good can be something that can have a really personal meaning and can impact you as a business owner, as a founder, as an entrepreneur. So I really want you to just think about, what does that mean for you, really? I'm really interested to hear, have you created a business that serves you really well? Do you still love your business now as much as you did at the start? If not, what might you change to bring back some of that passion that you might have lost, or make your business more purposeful and better for you as a person? The second theme that has come out of all these conversations that I've been having was about business as a force for good for other people. So how does your business serve other people? And that could be looking at all different types of people that your business is involved with, people that you are supporting, and in turn, people that are supporting your business. So it could be team members if you're employing people. It could be freelancers or other companies that you outsource work to. It could be your customers or clients. It could be other people in your industry if you're connected with your peers in similar fields. For example, through networking groups or associations or sort of trade bodies that you might be part of. Or you could think about people in your local community who maybe live or work near you and your business. Or it could be other people across the world, and maybe even people in generations to come who are not even born yet, or people who are quite young and in the early stages of their lives and their careers. So I've had so many different conversations with guests on the podcast about all these different types of groups of people, and have had some really interesting examples shared of practical, simple things that people are already doing, which maybe you might choose to do in your business. If you're not already, you might take inspiration from. So I'm just going to touch on some of these now. So an example of a business producing good for others, I thought came through in the conversation I had with Sue Nelson back in episode number 2, where she spoke about how important it was for her to create a business that had a really positive work culture and was a nice place to work and treated people nicely. So that, at a most fundamental level, is a really good place to start. In the conversation I had with Giles Miskin back in episode 7, he spoke about how, as his business had grown and his journey had evolved from being the founder of the business to now being in a place where he spends less time day to day running his business, which has freed him up to set up his charitable foundation. How important it was for him, in his words, to get out of his own way and delegate some of his responsibilities to other people in his team, and how that had allowed them to develop in their careers and for them to have a sense of progression as well. So another thing to think about there. In the conversation I had with Sian Holtz, which was back in episode 8, she spoke about engaging her team and also her customers with some of the charitable work that they have chosen to do as a company, and how she'd been really encouraged by how those two different groups, her employees and her customers, have both really got behind these charitable causes and have got really excited and were really, enthusiastically backing the work that they were doing. So yeah, another couple of examples there. And most recently, in the last episode that I published, which was the conversation with Gemma Fairclough-Haynes in episode 9, she was talking about how she was giving back to her local community and working with people at the older end and the younger end of the spectrum in terms of age. So she has done the Dementia Friends training, and she had spoken about how that was impacting the way that she related to older people, and also the work that she was doing in schools. So she does some really great work going into schools, talking about her business, how she set that up, and also her career progression in law to inspire young people to think about self-employment and also careers in the law. Again, really simple things that you might like to consider doing if you're not already. She offers work experience to young people. She's taken on a Kickstart placement person. And she also volunteers her time as a school governor. So again, these are all things that you might think about doing if you were interested in giving back your time, your skills to people in your local community. And then thinking about sort of how you might help people in your industry or in the wider business world. This came up in a couple of conversations with Martin White back in episode 4. He was talking about his business, Green Business Hub, which is all about connecting people who run sustainable businesses, who do things that are good for the environment. And his main message was really about how important it is that we have strong networks in business that we can draw support from, but also give back to. And the conversation that I had with Deborah Turner also touched on this area. Back in episode 5, she was talking about all of the work that she does with the FSB, Federation of Small Business, and how she volunteers her time to work on policy and lobbying and advocating on behalf of small business to government. So again, another really practical example there of something that you might consider doing, offering your time to support networks that your business might be part of and perhaps your peers in your industry. So those are the first two kind of perspectives on business for good and what it might mean for you based on some of the examples of the people that I've been speaking to. So thinking about how can business be a force for good for you as an individual, as a business owner? How can it be a force for good for all the other people that the business draws support from or gives support to? And the third aspect was really, I think, the theme of business as a force for good for the planet, thinking about environmental impact. And this, I would say, came through most strongly in the conversations that I've had with Sian Holt and Martin White. So Sian was talking about how she had used the lockdown time during the pandemic when all of her retail outlets were closed. She used that as an opportunity to do a big sustainability audit of the whole business and really think about how they were producing waste, how they could reduce that, how they were using energy, how they could be more efficient. And as a result, she said she's made lots of changes already. For example, just changing the packaging that they use for their products to make that more eco-friendly. There's lots more changes that are in the pipeline. So I thought that was a really inspiring example of some good that had come out of the lockdowns for her and her business. And Martin White obviously is very knowledgeable on this area because that's what he does with his own business. He shared a bit about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. If that's not something you are familiar with, I highly recommend you have a look and read into that. I'm sure we'll touch on that again more in future podcast episodes, but it did come up in that conversation back in episode 4 and also in the very first episode that I recorded with Catherine Gallagher. And he was also talking about the UK COP26, the climate change conference that's coming up that we're hosting in the UK in November. And we also talked about the circular economy and how important it is for businesses to be thinking about these issues. So that's the third aspect that I wanted to touch on, which I think has really come out of my conversations so far. And the fourth and final aspect is all about money. And obviously at the end of the day, we are in business to make money. We need to make money to survive, to pay our bills, keep the lights on, to pay people, and to create the impacts that we want to create in the world. And ideally, we should all be making a bit of profit and have some surplus left over at the end of the day to, reinvest in growth and to enable the business to be sustainable for the long term. And I'm going to go back to episode 6 for this point and talk about the conversation I had with Nikki Jupp, because I really like what Nikki said. And she somewhat summed this up really well, I felt. So she said that when I asked her this question about what business as a force for good meant for her, that it was about thinking about the day-to-day running of your business, kind of what are the things that you can do on a day-to-day basis to create more good across the other areas I've spoken about already. But also, what do you do at the end of the day? So with the profit that's left over after all the costs and expenses are covered. And yeah, you could think about maybe donating some of that to charitable causes, or creating growth, creating more opportunities, creating more impact through your business, whatever feels the right thing for you to do to further your business mission and purpose. But I just really liked that way of thinking about business as a force for good, that it is ultimately also about what you do with the money that you create. So I'm just going to leave you with those 4 thoughts, and I'd really love to hear from you about what business as a force for good means for you in terms of those different areas that I've been talking about today. So how can your business be more of a force for good for you individually, as a business owner, as a founder? How can your business create more good for other people? That could be the people working in the business or with the business or around the business. How can your business be a greater force for good for the planet? And even if you're not actively creating positive impact for the planet, how could you just reduce any negative impacts that you might be creating? And how can your business create more good through the profits that you generate as well? And I'm going to just sum up by talking about an event that I have got coming up, which I'm going to be hosting online on Wednesday, the 6th of October. If you're really interested in this topic as much as I am, about how business can be a greater force for good, but also how you can increase your income and impact, then you're going to love this event, which I am running. It's called Think Bigger: How to Harness how to harness the ripple effect to increase your income and impact. And we're going to be talking more about this subject. We're going to be talking about marketing as well, because that's what I do, and thinking about how you can get your message out more widely to connect with the people that you want to connect with, to ultimately grow your business and be a greater force for good. So if that's something that you're interested in finding out more about, I would invite you to check out the website, where you can find out more and register for your place. It's called Think Bigger 2021.eventbrite.co.uk, and you can register for a place, pay as you wish, and all of the profits are going to be donated to a charitable cause. Every pound that we get donated will fund the planting of a fruit tree for generating income for families in Kenya. So if you like the sound of that, go and check it out. Think Bigger 2021.eventbrite.co.uk. And I'd love to see some of you there, get to meet you, hear more about your businesses, what business as a force for good means for you. Thanks for listening in to today's Get Fruitful Conversation. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, I invite you to give us a 5-star rating, leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, and tell your friends and colleagues to check it out too. This will help us reach a wider audience and make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, connect with other like-minded people in business, and continue conversations about topics discussed here, then I'd love you to come and find our community online. It's free to join us. Just search for the Get Fruitful Business for Good group over on Facebook, visit my website, getfruitfulmarketing.com, or click the links in the show notes. I'd love to hear what business for good means for you. Until next time, goodbye for now.